heavy agenda tonight. We actually only have one item on the agenda other than citizen participation proclamation, but I understand that Mr. Cameron is going to fill in quite a bit of tonight in his report. So we will start off with citizen participation. Anybody wishing to speak to anything not on the agenda, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Lester White, 2116 East Haley. My problem is the city will not enforce the parking over the sidewalks ordinance. I talked to the police chief, both police chiefs, and we've gotten nowhere. About a year ago, they did put letters of some sort on the front doors. The problem went away for a few months, but it's mostly a rental area there in the duplexes on at East Haley, at Oakwood, and so they move in and out, so the problem just reoccurs. And almost every day there's probably 4 or 5 cars blocking the sidewalks in that area. So it would seem as though it is an ordinance. The police should be able to enforce it. Tickets, warnings, whatever. Just something I'd like to bring the attention of the city to try to get resolved.
All right, thank you, sir. And you said that was East Haley and Oakwood area?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak to anything not on the agenda, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Anyone else wishing to speak to anything not on the agenda? Seeing none, citizen participation is closed. Moving on to proclamation. This is not our typical proclamation, but it is important to draw attention to this. I think it's something that we've all dealt with in one way, shape, or form. I think everybody that's probably watching on TV has dealt with it in some way, shape, or form. It's not something we want to talk about, but it is definitely a cause that I feel that we should draw attention to. We do have some people here tonight that have dealt with it firsthand. We have one of our citizens, Jody Rice, whose daughter Kyla Irwin committed suicide in 2015. Since then, she's gone on to work tirelessly to try to draw attention to suicide prevention and suicide awareness. And we also have with us Carmen Parker Bradshaw, who's the Chief of Staff with the Burrell Center. And the Burrell Center does a lot of work for Republic citizens, mental health, working with suicide prevention. So our proclamation is for Suicide Prevention Week. Whereas suicide is a public health issue that requires vigilant attention and preventative action, with 79 deaths by suicide recorded in Greene County during 2017. And whereas each death by suicide directly impacts numerous family members, friends, loved ones, and by extension the entire community. And whereas Missouri is ranked number 13 in state suicide rates, with twice as many people dying by suicide annually than by homicide, according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And whereas no single suicide prevention effort will be sufficient or appropriate for all populations or communities, all are asked to join together and take a stand to prevent suicide. And whereas September 9th through 15th is recognized across the United States as Suicide Prevention Week and provides the opportunity to educate our community about warning signs and how to best help those in need. Now, therefore, I, Jeff Usry, Mayor for the City of Republic and the State of Missouri, do hereby proclaim the week of September 9th through 15th as Suicide Prevention Week. In testimony whereof I have hereunto set my hand and affixed the seal of the City of Republic this 4th day of September 2018. So, Ms. Cameron Parker Bradshaw with the Burrell Center. So, if you would come right up here. Very welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you. On behalf of Burrell Behavioral Health and other mental health and healthcare providers, families and individuals affected by suicide, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you and for the support that your city has for this important proclamation and issue. There's a few points I'll leave you with, and I'll make them brief. First, suicide is preventable. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. And each year, over 44,000 Americans die by suicide, and for every suicide, at least 25 will attempt it. Suicide is not inevitable for anyone, and for every person who dies by suicide, there are 278 individuals annually who think seriously about suicide, but for whatever reason do not die. Second, you can help someone in crisis. This is important for your city to know on a wide variety of levels. You have a lot of suicide issues, as do all cities, in the school systems, in the families, and in the workplace. There's no single cause for suicide, so how you help is critical. Knowing the identified risks and the warning signs to look for are important. Equipping and educating your teachers, your professionals, business leaders, families in your communities is really key, and Burrell is here to commit to help you with that. There are risk factors that are easily accessible and education that's online for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. The third thing I'll tell you with is when you're in situations like this, try to respond with the right information. You guys can save a life. What you're doing this week is incredible and a good start. If you believe someone is at risk of performing suicide or making the choice to consider it, encourage them to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's free. It's 1-800-273-TALK. You can speak to a counselor. You can go online. Burrell also has a 24/7 free crisis hotline where we have staffed therapists and psychiatrists ready and able to help anyone who calls. We'll get them in any county in the state of Missouri. We'll work with you. And that number is 1-800-494-7355. This is a very important week, and I look forward to seeing how your city embraces this and we stop the suicide.
Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, I'm Jody. This is Mary Jane. We've both lost our children to suicide. I lost my daughter Kyla to suicide 2 years and 8 months ago. And I'm speaking today because I believe we have to come together as a community to help prevent suicide. Since I lost Kyla, I've done many things to educate myself and others on suicide prevention. I opened a thrift store, Kyla's Closet Everlasting, with a semicolon at the end for suicide awareness, with a resource center that has information on the National Alliance of Mental Illness group times, information on depression, anxiety, eating disorders, whatever I can help to find to help other people. All proceeds from my store goes to suicide awareness, prevention, and single mothers. I took a class on youth mental health first aid training and currently have paid for 7 single mothers to attend the class. I've taken several SOS classes, signs of suicide, and helped set up and spoke at a class for single mothers. I'm involved with Randy Bacon's project, It Knows No Face, on suicide awareness, as well as Mary Jane, which views November 2nd at Randy's studio. I recently went to listen to Kevin Hines, a suicide survivor, speak. He jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived. There I learned that as he was jumping, he said, "God, I don't want to die," after he jumped. He didn't want to die. He just wanted to know how to cope with his pain. We have to educate our parents and offer resources and learning skills to our children so they know it's okay to talk about the pain. Last year I took Be That Friend campaign to Republic schools by myself, but this year I am part of a Speak Up group, so I'm excited to say that I am no longer by myself. Along with Mary Jane, we have a group of other parents and grandparents that have lost children, and we're trying to get into the different schools in Springfield and the surrounding areas. Speak Up. Speak Up stands for Suicide Prevention Education Awareness for Kids United as Partners. Speak Up is a not-for-profit charitable foundation created in 2015 by 2 families that both suffer the loss of a child to suicide. Since the organization began in 2015, the suicide statistics have increased to an alarming rate. It has become a national crisis. It is our hope, our mission, that Speak Up will provide education and raise awareness about mental illness and suicide, bridging gaps between our community, schools, and parents. We wish to encourage and offer resources if you think your child is at risk. Most importantly, we want to help end the stigma associated with mental illness and suicide, teaching kids that it's okay to ask for help. This is to stop the stigma, break the silence, and to bring the power of Speak Up to everyone. We do this through community school events, speakers, training, and our teen-led Positive Mental Health campaign. We go to local schools, pick a group, 10 to 15 students, who come up with ideas for their campaign. It is their campaign, such as art contests, videos, assemblies, etc. We provide t-shirts, posters, and decals for the campaign through our sponsors and fundraising. The goal is to help teens understand that it is okay not to be everyone else's definition of perfect. We want to reach teens with a positive message of self-worth and value, as well as reinforce the idea that being yourself is good enough. We hope to gather other partners who would like to make a difference in the world our family member left behind. In memory of Kyla and Sam and many others, I will continue to speak up. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Mary Jane. Thank you all for coming. I know it's not generally something we want to talk about, but burying our head in the sand and acting like it doesn't happen isn't going to help anyone. So we would encourage on that week that everybody take a moment throughout the year that if they see somebody who looks like they may be in pain or in need of help, that they reach out to them and do everything they can to help them before it gets to that point. Okay, moving on. I need a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. On to boards, commission, committee schedule. Of note, city council meeting. The next one will be September 18th, 2018, followed by October 2nd, 2018. Planning and zoning will meet on September 10th. Moving on to old business and tabled items, I need a motion and a second for the second reading of bill number 18-38.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 7-0. Ms. Brenda?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri approving the final plat of the Frisco Square Phase 3 subdivision.
Thank you. Need a motion and a second for final passage. Well, before we do that, do we have any questions? We need to move to final. Okay. Do you have any questions, comments, or concerns for Ms. Haynes before we move into the final passage? Okay, need a motion and a second for final passage of bill number 18-38.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Franklin.
Aye.
Councilmember Duran.
Aye.
Councilmember Russell.
Aye.
Councilmember Dykeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Brashears.
Aye.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Carries 7-0. And that does it. We have no new business. We have no resolutions. Sorry everybody showed up for, if you were here for any of that. So moving on to reports from staff, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've got several things to report on tonight, go figure. So it kind of lends itself to the smaller agenda, but, so I want to report an expenditure that was over pretty much the $25,000 threshold. We partnered with the Republic School District right before school started. They had a water line that, needed to be replaced. They were trying to pave that parking lot at the middle school, and so it was about $40,000 to $50,000 project. And so, thanks to Andrew and our staff, we went ahead and worked with the school without an agreement that the city would replace that water main with them to pay us back the materials. So actually, it came in around $26,210. And so I want to report the expenditure because that's what's part of our protocol for reporting where money over $5,000 has been spent that was not budgeted. The school is reimbursing the city for all those funds, so there's nothing that we actually lose, but it was a way to maximize, even though the school district is a different account, we're all paying into it the same way, just like residents are paying into our revenues. So I think that was a good win-win for the community without having to pay an additional expense, but also partnering together to get that done. I've received some feedback about the roundabout discussion as to that there was a delay on that project. Just to clarify, that project is going to be bid in January of 2019. Last year, there were 13 other projects that were competing for that same bid, and so they were not ready with the final documents to present it for a bid, so it wasn't a matter that the city or the school didn't do any of our part of the obligation. MoDOT was just behind on all the drawings, so they had to pick and choose what those were, and they asked could this one be delayed. And so actually, when you consider Oakwood and Hines, where that project is, I think having two delays at the same time would have been almost a little bit of a much larger challenge. So it will bid out in January 2019. You'll see our crews begin to start relocating utilities. We are partnering on that. That will also help development in that area. So we'll be starting that in the coming months. We're going to be working on the Valley Trails at Valley Park water line. So all those will be kind of done in and around that January timeline. But if there's any questions, that project will be started most likely around May when school lets out. And it'll have, I do not have the completion time, but it will not be open when school starts. But they'll have the bypass routes or the ways to get to and from the school. That'll be well marked and taken care of. So, congrats to the public school district, or Republic School District, with the new athletic complex. If you were able to attend, if you were not able to attend, it was a pretty incredible night. I think they estimated somewhere around 4,600 people attended that event. If you were able to go, it was an incredible venue. Although the school district handled it very well, and I think that just speaks volumes to that we have in our community and the work the community came together to make that project happen. But it's a beautiful facility, and so there's a game Friday night, so encourage everybody to get out and support the Repmo Tigers. Mud Run, over 900 participants that were there. I want to commend all the city staff. Jennifer, I don't know how you do it, really. I was just glad to be out there kind of just saying, hey, I'll help. And so, but with the storms that were coming in the area that day, it was one of those things where I get a little anxious, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, maybe I'm supposed to make a decision somewhere. But I just knew there was a group sitting in a tent that was monitoring the radar, taking care of all that. But just to see the community come out and support and be a part of that, I mean, what was it, 375, like, when you first started? Yeah. Attendees?
330.
Yeah, so to be over 900 was incredible. It was fun to watch. I'd like to get in the mud and do that. I just feel like I'd pull something. But I commend the staff for a job well done, and all the people. All the people that volunteered that were out there that morning early, getting that ready. It was a great event for our community, and I suspect it'll only grow larger because you guys got big vision. So great job. So now some stuff that's going on. I want to talk about Highway 60. We had the work session here several weeks ago about the Highway 60 corridor, 30,000 cars going through there a day, and the interest of protecting the rights and making sure we protect that thoroughfare going from Republic to Springfield. I think everybody would look around and see that traffic's getting probably a little bit more congested as we continue to grow. And part of that discussion, what Scott found later on, there is a 2006 settlement agreement between the City of Republic and Springfield that actually specifies or outlines that we will work to protect the integrity of that corridor, or at least we'd work with MoDOT to make sure that that everything was approved to their standard. Well, we've had a recent development that we were working with that pretty much unveiled that all the property along that 60 corridor is going to struggle to have any type of marketability or access to it for any large-scale development. And so what we did, as I mentioned at the last council meeting, is we were drafting a letter to the OTO to identify, to make this a priority for us. We have MM on our priority list that says, hey, listen, we want to widen MM for the growth and development in the business area. But the 60 corridor was not probably, I would say, it's for our grant funding that we've submitted, it probably wasn't the one we were submitting funding for. But after what happened in that development and looking at what the barriers are to entry in that corridor, it's the transportation system. And so one of the ideas or the discussion was, or is to add an additional lane. The outer lanes, like you'd see on South Glenstone, I think is the reference we used or Garrett used in the work session, it's kind of the concept for that area is to actually have an outer road or something that goes along the adjacent, not to slow down traffic. And so we convened a meeting with OTO and met with them here on our campus last week, and we discussed what were the options for getting that done. And so what I have in one, and I apologize, I don't have these passed out there for everybody, but every year they do a priority project schedule, and I've provided this information to you, and you will see that, and I'm not going to read them all to you, but you'll see about 6 or 7 lines down, the intersection improvements at 174 are included in this program. So after our discussion last week, what was it, last week ago Tuesday, the idea was to create a corridor study, and we estimate, so this is a broad estimate at this stage, to be somewhere between $250,000 and $300,000 to study that corridor through Republic all the way to into James River Freeway. But we're also looking from James River through that Springfield might want to participate in that study. And so what was recommended to us and what staff pursued was requesting for that project to be added to the prioritization schedule. And I'm happy to report that after the last Thursday, was it Thursday? I'm so off on this now. Last Friday, the meeting, that project and that scoping project was listed as the #1 priority in Southwest Missouri. So with all of our regional partners and everyone that was in that meeting, which compiles all the cities in Southwest Missouri, correct? That was the one that was scored the highest that we need to work on, which means it moved to the top of the list and it was never even on the list. So that's good news for our community. The second good news of that same study is the safety improvements that are required at intersection of 60 and 174. Most people will tell you that is the bottleneck in Republic right now. And that is the place, that intersection creates the largest amount of consternation. I see more safety issues, people pulling in the wrong way, going down 60 the wrong direction where they think they turned into the correct lane. And so after the scoring in that particular thing, it moved up into the top 5 ranking of those projects of regional significance. And basically, if you was to look at the data that was provided by staff, it would tell you that those 2 projects probably rank in fundability 1 and 2. So the other ones are contingent upon available funding and different things of that nature. If I'm getting this wrong, Gary, you're going to have to correct me. But in essence, those 2 projects went from being one not on the list and one being the 7th ranked to being respectively 1 and 2 for the overall prioritization list. Which leads me to the second point, is there's a letter in here from the OTO supporting the issue that's going to be on the ballot in November, which is Proposition D. And I want to provide what that funding mechanism provides, because there's going to have to be funding to provide these projects in that. And so this was provided to us at the last meeting, and I will tell you the group or the OTO, which I'm an executive member, we voted to support, or at least a resolution to support as a collective organization, what the impact of Proposition D would do. And so for what it does for the City of Republic, just as from our local dollar, it would generate after fiscal year 2023, $232,000 that would be used for local funds, most likely for matching funds to the overall STIP program. But also at the same time, when you consider that we have right at $200,000 in our transportation budget right now to deal with paving, this would add an additional funding mechanism to do that if we wanted to. The other piece of this, though, is for the OTO region, it's $15 million a year in additional funding that we're not getting now. And so when you look at the overall list of these projects of regional priority, having that funding mechanism will play a beneficial part. It's not to sit here and endorse it. It's to say this is what that money will generate if Proposition D is passed. I see it more as a safety proposition for at least the 70 and 64. Also, creating the walkability area around the overpass, the railroad overpass. But just trying to create a more safer environment around the Hines intersection and the 6174. That is not going to be a cheap resolution. But it did score high, and it will also say that a lot of the congestion that we're facing in this area starts at 174 and 60. But also, we've got to be mindful of protecting the interest of the 60 corridor from James River, or from M to James River. So I'm extremely thankful to the OTO, to staff for pushing this, and also for us actually leading the change of what that is, because when we saw an opposition to the development that's going on, and transportation or access to 60 was the limiting factor. That could be a number of businesses or properties out there that if we had an opportunity for someone to come in additionally to add more business or add a different service line to our community, we're likely in a position to tell them no. So it puts us in a position that we'll probably hold off any type of approvals and almost issue, I don't want to say the word moratorium, but I also want to say at the same time, until that study is done, we do not need to be allowing a whole lot more development until we know what the impact is going to be and we have a solution to that. So instead of saying we're not going to do anything, we're going to say we're going to commission a study. So I will be bringing before you probably a resolution or something that's supporting the idea that the city would contribute up to $50,000 of that study, asking MoDOT and Greene County to participate as well. And so maybe even OTO to participate in that funding. But I do think this is a very good project for us, and the way it ranked, I think it's going to be, it's a great first step to making sure we protect the integrity of that corridor, but also allow for development in that corridor as well. So more on that to come. And the last piece I have, I'm excited about this. We're getting ready to launch a website probably the next 30 days. It's a transparency website. Basically, it talks about where our budgets are, where our expenses go. It'll outline everything from where we write checks to, but you'll be able to see on a website basically everything from salaries and wages to different things that we have. There is full transparency of how we're running the local government. It was a part of our Encode or Tyler Express or Tyler implementation. It was a piece that we paid for. It says, hey, listen, here's where you're at year to date. Here's where our money's coming from. Here's where our money's going. And I believe instead of saying, hey, waiting for someone to ask us for that information, we're very forward thinking with it and presenting it out there on our website for people to see. So I'm looking forward to that launching. I anticipate the next 30 to 45 days. And so we will give a demonstration to council what that'll look like as we move forward. But other than that, 15 minutes, that's all I have.
All right. So I have a few things. Talk about the tornado sirens. We had some bad storms that eventually had some tornadoes touching down west of us. And we got some comments about the tornado sirens not going off in Republic. And while it appeared from, if you looked at the TV, it could have looked like we were under a tornado warning, but we never were. So with the new system, they developed the polygons. It's not just an entire county where the sirens go off. So if we weren't in that polygon, they didn't see a need to activate our sirens for the National Weather Service. So it wasn't something where we just didn't do it. It was because the National Weather Service never gave an indication that we needed to. And as luck would have it, we didn't need to. The transparency side, I think that's something that we're all excited about. This council appreciates transparency, and it's something that it lets the citizens know there's not somebody behind the curtain. I mean, you know, here is the money we have. Here is what we're spending it on. You can look at everything that we do. Because ultimately, it's not our money, it's their money. They're the ones, the city operates for them. So I'm super excited about that because it gives anybody in the city of Republic the ability to go look at everything we're doing. So while there may have been questions in the past, and maybe sometimes council didn't know the answers to them because they weren't being given the correct information, everybody can see it, whatever it may be. Something else the Highway 60 corridor. Garrett gave us the presentation, and we had MoDOT there and several partner agencies, OTO. And we also understand that what we do in Republic doesn't just affect Republic. And I think that was made pretty clear, that it also affects the business through that thoroughfare for Monette, for Aurora. So I think we've talked about this, and I don't mean to throw you under the bus out here in the public meeting, but I think it's important that Aurora and Monette also look at the solutions to these problems along with us. And that may be that maybe they have to put some skin in that game. I'm not saying that they're not, just that maybe something going forward we need to maybe approach them, and I think that's already in process. David may not want to announce that yet, but I think it's something that's important that we're going to work together because it doesn't just affect us, it affects them. So we all have to work on that. The next thing was sidewalks. There's been some comments about sidewalks over the past, not just parking over them, but actually having them. And it's important for everyone in the city to know that this council didn't decide the developments as they were then. But what this council is doing to ensure that doesn't happen again, as long with the staff, is we look at developments down to the sidewalk. It's not just about how many houses are there or water retention. It's about do citizens have safe access to walk? And that's why we make sure we don't put in a subdivision unless they put sidewalks and street lighting in. That's just not something that happens anymore. So that's a credit to the staff and this council for making sure that that's a priority. And then the last thing is this is something kind of cool, that the Missouri Animal Control Association nominated the Republic Animal Control for the 2018 Missouri Outstanding Animal Welfare Agency Award, which is a big deal because that's the entire state of Missouri. And they were nominated for the hard work that they do every day, day in and day out there. So it's nice to see that even though they're working with old facilities that really need to be replaced, and thankfully will be with that capital improvements tax, that even with that, they're still being nominated for an award. So can't wait to see how well they're going to do when they have a new building and can actually take care of the animals the way they need to. So I didn't take quite 15 minutes, but Mr. Wilson, I've never gotten to start with you because Mr. Self's usually here, so let's go to Mr. Wilson.
Well, get my voice to working. I would like to thank the staff for what they've been doing, especially some departments and their suggestions and the amount of money they've saved the city with what they've done. I just think they're doing a real good job.
Absolutely.
That's about it today.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Joe.
Just to comment on the recent Got Mud event. I've had several friends participate in it. Had a great time. Comments about they wished more communities in the area did something like this. Just bodes well for Republic and the things that we offer the citizen.
Yeah,
that's great. And to also say that we have another large event that's maybe not Republic sponsored, but it's starting here on Saturday morning. It's the MS 150. There'll be a lot of bicyclists leaving, I guess from the middle school typically is where they leave from, and so encouraging everyone to support that, be aware of it, and observe safety around it when that starts.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bashir.
The mud run has been mentioned 2 or 3 times. I'll mention it again. Anytime we have an event that is carried off with that much professionalism and just smoothness, it's just amazing. Do you have any idea how many city employees were involved with the mud run?
Well, that day, I mean, our whole park staff was out there, and tons of firefighters were out there, the police was out there, so we had a lot of people there.
I think it's probably safe to say there were hundreds of hours that were put in to pull that off, along with the different volunteers. But it was really neat to be out there and to see the kids, the little girls, like I mentioned last time, and the adults this time too. They had a really good time. So thank you, staff. They did a fantastic job.
Thank you, sir. Jennifer, I'd say you probably think you put 100 hours in yourself, huh?
It's a team effort.
Yeah, I know. Mr. Dykeman.
Well, you know, with part of the website coming online, I know when we were, Jason, who used to be on the council, and I sat with the staff and looked at all the different software packages and what this was going to offer. I think it's just phenomenal and great. I mean, I know cities where I came from that are a lot larger cities don't offer that. And people are always asking questions, and it's going to be something that they're going to be able to go out there and look at, see. Sure, they're still going to have questions, but here again, it's going to give us the ability to look also and say, here's what it says or not. And again, I think we have the best staff in the country.
I would agree.
Thank you.
Mr. Russell.
Nothing to report, but a question for Mr. Cameron. Is it unusual to have a project go from nowhere on this list up to number 5 and a project go up to number 1? That seems unusual to me.
It is unusual.
Well, why do you think it got bumped? Like, I know you went over it, but boil it down.
Well, I think it's a matter that we take a proactive step to try to address a regional problem. It's not just a Republic issue. It's a thing that's saying, how do we become a member of the region with our money that's allocated in the STIP? So I made mention of the project at the work session, that nothing against Oakwood and Hines, but that does not have a regional implication. And we can do those things, and they're going to take whatever we put together in front of them. I think when we started changing our model to say wherever that money goes should not be a side street in town. Not to say that that wasn't a need. It's to say that when we focused our transportation mindset from, let's deal with something that will affect the overall good. So 60 and 174, when they sat down and said, what's going to be your priority? It wasn't something that was like, let's make it where everyone benefits, even that's traveling from Monette to Springfield from that improvement. That's a win. But I think just to shift focus, because on that portion of 60, everybody was kind of scratching their heads of what are we going to do? And we need to address it rather than saying, hey, it's you, it's this agency, and they're holding you back. Well, we need to get together, and I think when we did that and said, hey, we're not blaming a soul, we're just saying this is an issue that just from the growth and development, we need to address sooner rather than later. And I believe it's our willingness to change our mindset and their willingness to say, hey, we agree. So I think it's relationships. I think we've built relationships with the OTO that's just...
So you grabbed him by the ear and dragged him over there and made him look?
I'm not going to say that.
All right. Just checking. Thank you. That's all.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Ann.
I'm really excited about the OTO. I've had a couple calls, and then just this weekend we went to Menards, which was really awesome. But you can see Springfield moving closer and closer to us. So that's that's very, very important. So I'm very glad that we moved up on that list. I was camping this past weekend when the mud run was going on, and I had so much fun looking at all of my Snapchats from my friends and all their little kiddos, and they were filthy little girls, and it was hysterical. So I loved it, and they just raved about how awesome the event was. So I thank you guys for everything that you guys have done. That's it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Franklin.
It's always great hearing about everything going on with the city staff saving us money. That's incredible. Really appreciate that, especially with the roundabout and everything. Transparency is key, and I really appreciate the transparency. Thank you tonight, Mr. White, for coming to speak with us on the sidewalks. It's definitely an issue. I drive through there at least once every day, and drove through there on the way here, and there was 2. And I think that's kind of my low count, is 2 blocking the sidewalk. And so definitely going to be an issue working through and trying to get the message out, but I appreciate you coming in and speaking with us about that. It's very important to keep the sidewalk, especially this time of year in the fall. Perfect walking weather. It's great to be out walking. It's great to see other people walking. It's great to meet people walking. So keep walking things open, and I really appreciate the citizens' effort as well. But other than that, I really appreciate the video with the mayor, and thank you for taking the time. Even though our future mayor isn't quite there yet, she's definitely on her way. But that was a great video and gave a really good perspective of the small town life that I really appreciate living here in Republic. Thank you.
She was rough.
Yeah,
she knew her stuff. She would tell you that the mule should not be the state animal. It should be an angelfish. Is that
angelfish?
Yeah,
Angelfish.
She had her opinions, and you weren't going to change your mind, and I wasn't trying.
The trip to the Historical Society.
We went to the Historical Society.
That was awesome.
That's what they say. It doesn't matter how tough you are. If a 3-year-old hands you an imaginary phone, you answer it.
Yeah.
That's how we were. So she was great fun. So I appreciate that. Anybody have anything else, Mr. Justin?
Just real quickly, Mr. Russell, Kevin. What wasn't said in the OTO discussion was that the relationship that's been fostered with them really has flourished and grown strong in no small part because the City of Republic has Mr. Cameron at the helm. That's fact. That relationship didn't exist. David's fostered that between OTO and city staff, and that is in no small part why that is being now looked at because of the cooperative efforts there. So
yeah,
kudos to David and staff.
Thank you. Great job highlighting the city. Okay, thank you all for showing up for suicide awareness for the proclamation. I do appreciate it. And with that, I will ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned. I never have a problem getting a motion, a second, or a vote on that.
42
minutes. I know.